Well, there are no shortage of things to quicken the pulse of Canadian politics this week, as the second week of the fall sitting of the House of Commons felt like it was 10 weeks long.
Tax the tax. This will be a carbon tax referendum.
How the heck does that deal with an affordability issue? It is simply ridiculous.
Between now and October 29th, we could come to the conclusion that they have not used the time being offered them.
Extremely dishonest and fraudulent report from Bell Media-controlled CTV.
Poilievre goes after journalists constantly.
For used to casual homophobic comments from the other side of the House. Standing up to bullies requires us to call them out on their crap sometimes, and that's what I will do.
And I'm just asking the Prime Minister to be the better person.
I withdraw the comment about defecating.
The way the Conservative Party is comporting themselves is equivalent to out-of-control frat house.
But I've never seen anything as ugly as what happened yesterday.
A disgusting display of homophobia.
A luxurious bathtub has nothing to do with meetings. The Prime Minister's answer had nothing to do with the questions, but it had nothing to do with sex. I wasn't thinking about sex at all.
Okay, so we've seen an escalation of tensions, but a clear degradation of behavior, all of it raising questions about where federal politics is going and what it means for the federal election campaign that could happen at just about any time. So there's clearly a lot to talk about with our panel of party insiders. Greg MacEachern is a former Liberal ministerial staffer. Fred DeLorey is a former Conservative campaign manager. And Mélanie Richer is a former communications director for the NDP. It's good to see you all at the end of a somewhat interesting week. Like normally we say, oh, what do you want to pick and what do you want to talk about? But it's kind of just this one big continuum of rage is how I feel it's going here. Greg, get us started. Where that clip package ended with Garnet Jennis and the Prime Minister and this whole thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty horrified by as the Prime Minister put it, the casual homophobia. Last week we had a similar conversation, and I brought up that back in 2013, the Conservatives used to like to try to make fun of Justin Trudeau, and you can still see it by Conservative supporters on social media. They call him Justine or Trudy, so there's a feminization there. And what they're really telling us is that women are less than men, and if he was, he's less of a man because he might be, have some feminine characteristics. And I said last week, because this is a really uncomfortable topic, but they cast aspersions, and so Mr. Jennis, if I'm pronouncing his name.
I think so, yeah.
He will be known for the rest of his life for the flailing of the arms, and the funniest thing about it is his defense just made it worse and added extra time to it. I wasn't even thinking about sex, and I've joked with friends. I remember being a 16-year-old Catholic going, I think I probably said certain similar things going into confession, but I don't want to make too much light of it. But it is pretty horrible. And the other thing, David, that I've had a problem with is I watched a panelist last night on that issue, panelist on your late panel, that they're kind of brushed this aside. Well, before you do that, maybe talk to a queer person to see if they think it's homophobic. Because it has to start as an insult because it's a heckle. No one heckles, nice suit, you look sharp today. They heckle insults. So this was designed to be an insult. The other thing that's kind of delicious about this happening to the Conservatives, it's because of their pursuit of the Government of Canada buying a place for our diplomats to live in New York. They stayed on this silly, not always truthful pursuit, and it backfired on them. And again, this MP will be known for this the rest of their career.
Well, Fred, what do you think of what we saw in Ottawa this week?
There's a bit of context missing from that clip, right? Mr. Poilievre raised all of the luxury items in that $9 million condo. He mentioned the tabletops, he mentioned the marble countertops, he mentioned the copper bathtub. And then the Prime Minister got up and said, we're talking about, we have engagements here, we have meetings in this place. And then the MP made that comment. I'm saying this to point out that I don't believe it was a homophobic comment, but it's problematic that I have to say I believe it and that it's a debate. It was a stupid comment that could be construed as homophobic. We do not do well when we try to be cute, conservatives, and making a stupid comment like that, trying to make a joke in the House of Commons during a debate like this, just unnecessary. To Greg's point, though, about the whole debate about the condo itself, the $9 million condo, you raised it here a few weeks ago about how, and I think you mentioned it, David, we sold a $13 million.
Trying to sell. It's on the market. Yeah.
I don't understand the government messaging on this, how they go into this, trying to defend all this. We have meetings here, it's useful for this. Why don't they just say we saved Canadians $4 million in taxes?
A better spot for a lower price.
Right? I don't understand why they can't get that message.
Yeah, but, I don't know what Garnet Genis meant, Mel. There's intent, there's impact, and this is the whole intersection of language that people need to be careful on, especially in a place like Parliament. But whatever it is, it just continued. It was a pretty ugly week. In the House.
It's funny that you say that because I have this written here. It's not the intent, it's the impact. That's what we tell our kids, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if your intent was well. And to be fair, this MP has shown bad intent on, fighting for the rights of folks who are LGBTQ+. So whether his intent was there or not, the impact and the hurt that was done by that comment, I think is the most important part of that. And unless you're willing to own up to that, you're not actually helping it go any further. But yeah, this week it's funny because if I was, a regular Canadian watching TV, I don't know who is fighting for the things that I care about when this is all that I'm hearing.
Yep.
It's funny to kind of hear you say, we don't need to say this, we don't need to be cute. It, to me, is also it's snide comments. It's just mean. It's mean to be mean. It's not something that I connect with. It's something that makes me want to turn the channel. I can imagine that with a lot of folks across the country, that's how they feel about it too. But when you're also up in the polls like that, why? Why are you acting like that? You should be trying to show people that you're still fighting for them, and you should be trying to show people that, hey, when I'm, sitting in that chair, I'm going to be prime ministerial. I'm going to be able to lead the country and lead the country with grace. And instead, it's just it just seems like, a bully on the schoolyard, and all of them are just joining in and saying, yeah, this is fun, so we're going to. And I don't think, while folks are feeling frustrated and are feeling like, they need more from their government, I don't think that that's what they're asking for.
There's another,
David, just
quickly, yeah.
Yeah. Look, Fred, I don't understand what the implication of two straight married men in the same bathtub, how would that not be construed as an insult and homophobic? And again, Mel makes an excellent point. The record of the MP who made this homophobic, in my opinion, remark has not been actually really great for the gay and lesbian community. So if you don't want to be, it goes to your history. If this was somebody like Melissa Lantsman who wrote a op-ed saying that her leader, Andrew Scheer, should go to pride parades, even though her current one doesn't, they might have been given the benefit of the doubt, but not in this case.
Okay, you want a quick response to that?
Yeah, I'll just say, in the context of what they were saying, he was saying we have meetings in this place, and it was after a list of all these luxury items. Look at the context of where the comments come from. The beginning of that is conversation has been left out.
But it was followed up by Michael Barrett, who made a comment about bunk beds.
Yeah. Okay, but look, the speaker is going to look at this, and this just shows, how language is seen by different people. But I want to play another incident today because things didn't calm down. And it was during debate this morning. The Prime Minister wasn't there, Mr. Poilievre wasn't there, but a few other people were. Just look at what Conservative ethics critic Michael Barrett had to say and what happened.
And I don't know, Speaker. I don't know if I hear the sound of a pager beeping back there, but maybe that member can quiet it.
The honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, that is a disgusting comment, and he should be asked to retract that. That is clearly referring to pagers that has been used as weapons that have taken the lives of innocent people, including children. I asked this member, he should be apologizing for that, but he should also be apologizing for the slander he used in this chamber yesterday.
I was hearing a lot of debate going on there while the honourable member did have the floor. I would maybe let the honourable member maybe retract that last comment before he continues. The honourable member leads Grenville Thousand Islands Great Lakes.
Withdrawn.
Okay, Mel, that's clearly a reference to the attacks Israel launched against Hezbollah leadership. The NDP supporters of Palestine being accused of being Hezbollah sympathizers. That's what that was about. There were a few moments this week where MPs, including Ben Carr, who's Jewish, said, "Stop this, guys! Like people are dying here. 2 Canadians were killed this week in an IDF strike, right?" What are your thoughts on what we're seeing here?
Yeah, pretty gross, right? When you talk about the context of, 2 Canadians have died too, this is people's lives are on the line. And to use it, lightly, to use it as a dig, to use it as a comment, and I'll also point out that this is also the MP who was kind of chuckling and cheering folks on last week when it came to protesters who were harassing folks on the Hill. So that kind of behavior, again, should have no place in Ottawa, should have no place in elected politics. But particularly when you're trying to say to folks that I'm the person that's going to be fighting for you and I'm going to be the next government, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, and yeah, I don't really understand why that was said. I don't have a universe where that is something that you're like, yeah, this sounds like this is going to be a good dig. This is something that's reasonable to say. So yeah, I don't understand what's happening there.
But Fred, it's kind of like, it's similar to the bathtub thing, right? You're caught up, you think you're taking a shot, right? You're doing this sort of thing. And we used to talk about moments like this because of their rarity. Yeah. Now we're talking about a week like this because it is the norm. Right. There's a new baseline in politics right now. I don't know if it's good for anybody.
We are, for the first time, back into a minority parliament situation since 2011, since 19 to now, and I've said this before, how it wasn't a real minority. Liberals had a pandemic, then they had to deal with the NDP. We're now into this, and people aren't sure how to act.
Was it like this, though, back then? Like, I was in Newfoundland covering provincial politics,
it was
right?
Vicious
like, was
back
it this
then.
bad?
It was very vicious back then. I remember the stuff that was going on then, and it was, the Conservatives trying to bring down the Liberal government at the time from 04 to 06, and then from 6 to 11, the Liberals and other parties, different times trying to bring down the Conservative government until they did in 11, and then we got a majority out of it. But back to this comment that the MP made today, again, an abhorrent comment that does not help us in any way. It's back to my what I said earlier about, we don't do cute well, trying to be cute, trying to be funny, when the leader has been so consistent and strong with his messaging. And I know a lot of people criticize him for that. And when you watch in question period, when members get up and they list off every member gets up and says the same thing over and over and over again. It's because they're clipping it, they're getting it to their constituents so people are seeing it. It's when you go and do these cute things that don't work for us and are not funny, it takes us off message and it costs us.
Greg, your thoughts on this one, then I want to switch to the whole CTV and media issue.
Yeah, I was on the Hill for the first 2 years of the Liberals in opposition under minority. I don't remember anything homophobic. I could be wrong, said by the Liberals against the government. On this, I'm going to surprise perhaps some people here and say there are some Conservative MPs right now who are doing really good work. They're going out and meeting with stakeholders. They're preparing, if they are going to assume government, and they're doing it very quietly. And I think they're probably doing it with the full knowledge that they seem to be tasked with it. I don't want to mention their name because me saying that is probably the kiss of political death.
Stay off their side. Yeah.
So you get that, but I want to be really clear and I want to be fair on that. But then there's this other thing, I don't know what to call it, conservative idol or, most talented conservative, but there's this contest, it feels like, where there is a bunch of Conservative MPs that seem to be trying to get media attention in the hopes of approval, I guess, from their leader. And it backfires again and again on them. And, I heard from Conservatives this week, they just felt like they were stepping on rake after rake. The Liberals had a really good week. And they don't deserve to have. They haven't done anything to have a good week. It's the Conservatives that for the second week in a row seem to just making things worse for themselves.
So, okay, getting media attention. So, Mel, they got media attention this week because of media. CTV has we don't know if they were fired, resigned, but they're gone. 2 employees of CTV who were involved in this story that Mr. Poilievre did not like because it they say maliciously, unethically edited a clip together to create a sentence and then put it in a poorly framed story, which the leader of the opposition had the right to be mad about. Don't know if there's still a boycott in place, but very few Conservative MPs appear on shows. They don't come on this one. You would see Andrew Scheer, Melissa Lantsman with Vashti over on CTV with some regularity and a few others. But what do you make of this? Like, I wonder, they had a legitimate beef with CTV. They started targeting the Star and others sort of in the blast radius of the fallout here, Bell, the corporate partner. Do you think they're going to do like debates and let media on their campaign plane next year? I mean, when there's an election, where do you think this goes because of what happened this week?
You know, I was in the last Ontario election in 2022, and the Premier Ford had no media on his bus. So it's definitely something that we've seen before. So I guess let's see. And debate also, great question. But to go back to, you know, what happened, and to be clear, what happened with CTV, obviously bad. But he is using this for two reasons. One, it's to rile up his base and to make money. And two, it's an excuse to not do interviews. He doesn't like to be held accountable. He doesn't like questions that push him on what he doesn't want to talk about. He likes interviews where he gets asked the questions that he wants to be asked. But any time that he gets asked something that keeps him accountable or is trying to make him transparent, he then attacks the journalist. And to me, this is what this looked like today. And you know, we've all worked in media relations, so we know what that's like. We have disagreed on the phone before. You know, I've called other people to say, hey, didn't love that headline. Where did that come from? Can we fix it? Because this doesn't, you know, this wasn't representative of what was said. And usually you go back and forth and there's like a compromise, or this is what, you know, was understood. This is what was understood. And that's what happens. That's what media relations is on the Hill. So to see this full-on attack and again, like an excuse to just punch down and to say, well, I guess we're not going to do interviews anymore, is the opposite of what Canadians need. Canadians actually do need answers. They do need to figure out what this guy is going to be about and who he's going to be like as Prime Minister. And, you know, maybe it works for the Conservative leaders, but I know that at least the folks in my universe are like, what is happening? So
yeah, Fred, where do you think it goes? I mean, you're a former national campaign manager, you're a former head of communications for the party, right? The Conservative Party. Look, I've been called and yelled at by communications people for reporting they didn't like. It's been done privately. Yeah. And there are times when you just agree to disagree. At times I've been wrong. It's like, oh my God, you're right. Yeah. I didn't understand that. And you fix it. Yeah. This was different, obviously, because the circumstances are different. But it wasn't that kind of a conversation. It was all public, and then the corporate owner of CTV was pulled into it, which may have led to the outcome we saw. I don't know. But where do you think this goes in terms of a media relationship with the Conservative Party going forward through the campaigns and into all these things? Because they already don't do a lot of interviews, don't do a lot of debates. What do you think happens now?
Well, I think what it does, it sends a very clear message when you report on what a Conservative leader says. Report on what he says. Yeah. Don't take it out of context. Like, this story was egregious. To completely frame it as if he was voting down the government on dental care, which was nothing that he came close to talking about. He wanted a carbon tax election. So to completely mislead on that, and then to see that it was, as it was, I think, dubbed on this show,
Frankenclip is what Kate
Frankenstein clip, where they took all these different pieces and put it together. That's egregious. So I think, you know, obviously Conservatives have always felt, whether it's true or not, we've always felt that press gallery generally is against us at some level. Not saying it's true or not, I'm saying it's the feeling we've always had. And when you see these examples of these things happening, it's good and I think important to call it out and to make clear that, you know, we're going to be watching you. And when you do these things, there's going to be consequences. Call it straight up, call it fair, and, you know, we won't react the way we did.
Craig, where do you think all of this goes?
Before that, egregious treatment from CTV. Stéphane Dion just said, "Hold my beer." You know,
so did they fake his or audit or edit his comments? They displayed it all.
Yeah,
that's all they did.
If you want an apples to apples comparison for media relations, we're never going to come up with one. All of us, the three of us here, have all had to speak to reporters, after a story. The majority of the times, it's not out of malice, right? There's been a mistake. And if you do feel it's out of malice, there's usually a trend, and there's a separate way to deal with that. So I do find it funny. I hope their adherence to accuracy will go to their own press releases, what they say in the House, because they are asking things of the journalists that they don't practice themselves. You know, they're not really dwelling in the palace of truth here on a lot of items. So I think in some ways, I agree. For CTV, absolutely bad. And I bet you there's a lot of red faces around there. But, you know, I'm not sure that they were purposely out to get the leader. It is interesting. CBC reported that I believe the individual from Bell, the executive, did donate to Jean Charest. So I don't know if that's part of it.
Well, I mean, who knows, right? But it's not a good moment for the profession. It's not a happy week for the profession. You know, Mel, it is. One of the things I liked about covering politics in Newfoundland is there's always an element of fun in it, and there's none of that anymore up here. Like it is a joyless city, and it is a joyless politics right now. And I get people are angry and frustrated about costs, but civility has kind of disappeared.
I was actually saying something similar today of how I'm having a hard time, you know, being in this or hearing this discourse all the time. It's just it's not fun. So totally. I don't know how you change this. I don't think you do until an election, and then goodness knows what's going to happen in the election and how that's going to be. But the interesting thing, and we've talked about this on the show before, is journalists already were feeling like, oh, how do we cover him? We're walking a little bit on eggshells because we don't want to become the story, but we want to make sure that we're covering fairly, etc. And I can't imagine that this helps that. Like I feel like you kind of now are even more, okay, how do we cover fairly? How do we make sure that Canadians, you know, have an accurate picture of what's happening? But
Yeah, there is the anxiety, Fred, of that interaction with the leader directly, right? Because he very rarely holds news conferences here. He often does it out in the smaller centres, and proxies get sent to ask the questions, and they're not the parliamentary press gallery, and they maybe aren't as used to it. So there's a pressure there, right? And then there is just this broader thing where the partisans who are watching it, they don't want you to call balls and strikes like you see it. They want you to take their side, and that's the measurement of fairness. You gotta be 100% with the Liberals watching or 100% with the Conservatives watching, and if you're not, you're biased, and it creates, and this sounds like whining, and I don't mean to, but it creates challenges for the profession, because there's only so much abuse anyone could take, as we saw when Jagmeet Singh got confronted. You just get mad, you know, or you give up.
Yeah, I agree.
So do you think they let us on the plane, CTV, CBC, Canadian Press, when the Conservatives have their election, do you think they do the debate? Where do you think this goes in terms of cooperation?
I wish I had the courage to not let you guys on the plane when I was running the campaign. So my bet is they do have the courage to do that.
I wonder, I'm serious. Yeah.
Like the media landscape has changed. It's also the cost. Like when we bring the media on, when we run a campaign, 36-day campaign, it's $40 million we're spending. The plane, you got to get a massive plane and all of the reporters that you fill on that and all of the booking and tour. It's a lot of work. If you could cut that down and put more of that money into advertising and other things and have a small plane with a tight team,
little Cessna or something,
and talk to those regional outlets. And look, under Harper's leadership, we did the same thing in terms of trying to go over the head of the parliamentary press gallery. Go to the regions. Go to the Chronicle Herald in Nova Scotia. Go to
those are all going or gone, right? This is the problem, right? They
spot them. They're doing fine.
Yeah, lots of reporters, lots of reporters in the Telegram newsroom.
Yeah. Almost with a straight face there.
Yeah.
Almost with a straight face.
No, I'm excited for the Herald to come back instead of being called saltwater.
Okay.
But look, there's these going to the regional outlets and having those conversations with local reporters who talk and know about local issues worked under the Harper regime, and I think it'll work under the Poilievre one.
Okay, we got 30 seconds, but my Facebook feed and my Facebook friends is full of my journalists from Atlantic Canada who've lost their jobs because of what happened with Saltwire and where things are now. It's just, it's a grim situation. Anyway, your thoughts. What do you think happens? Do you think we get a debate like we've had in the past? Do you think we get a campaign like we had in the past? Because it seems unlikely.
Quickly, if the polls change. I mean, they're doing this because they can, right? So they're now not going to go on this channel. They're not going to go on CTV. Who could afford to do that? When I was working in politics, no one could.
Because that was the only media outlet.
Yeah.
Now you got
Twitter
YouTube and everything. You got your own.
You
got your own.
YouTube has changed the world.
But still, when you're in trouble or something big happens, you've got to go to the big networks if you want to get your message out.
Maybe, or if you just believe in good old-fashioned civic engagement, that's an option too. I want to thank you all for coming on. I have no idea if the boycott continues on the other network, but it's good to have you all here. Fred DeLorey, Greg MacEachern, Mélanie Richer.